There is a country at the very bottom of the world that nobody knew existed as a continent until 2017. Not as a country, as a continent. Scientists had suspected for decades that the landmass beneath and around New Zealand was not simply an island chain, but an entirely separate continent, the eighth continent on Earth, which they named Zealandia. Zealandia is a real continent with a real continental crust, roughly the size of India, about 94% of which sits underwater beneath the South Pacific Ocean. The part that sticks above the surface is what we call New Zealand. The country doesn't just sit on a continent, the country is a continent, almost all of which the ocean swallowed 5 to 80 million years ago. Every New Zealander is technically living on the exposed peaks of a drowned world. New Zealand was the last significant landmass on Earth to be settled by human beings. The Maori people arrived from Polynesia approximately 700 to 800 years ago, somewhere around 1200 to 1350 CE. Antarctica is effectively uninhabited, so for most of the past 200,000 years of modern human existence, New Zealand was the final, farthest, most remote place that people had not yet reached. When Maori arrived on these shores, the world's other great civilizations were already thousands of years into their histories. Egypt had built the pyramids 2,000 years earlier. Rome had risen and fallen. The Renaissance was just beginning in Europe, and New Zealand was having its first human footprint placed upon it. It is the newest human story on Earth. And before those first humans arrived, the islands were one of the strangest ecosystems the planet has ever produced. Because New Zealand separated from the supercontinent Gondwana approximately 83 million years ago, long before land mammals had diversified, the only native land mammals that managed to reach the isolated islands were two species of small bat. Two species of bat, that was it. No predators, no large herbivores, no rodents, no cats, no dogs, no foxes, no snakes. In the complete absence of mammalian competition, the birds of New Zealand did something extraordinary. They evolved to fill every ecological role that mammals play everywhere else. Some became grazers, some became predators, some became burrowers, and because there was nothing on the ground trying to eat them, many of them stopped flying entirely. New Zealand became the world's greatest experiment in flightless bird evolution, and the results were unlike anything elsewhere on Earth. The moa grew to be the tallest bird that ever existed, reaching heights of over 3.5 meters. The Haast's eagle became the largest eagle in history, with a wingspan of up to 3 meters, and it evolved specifically to hunt moa, an eagle the size of a small aircraft, hunting a bird the size of a giraffe, on an island that no human had ever seen. The kiwi bird, New Zealand's most famous native creature and the source of its citizens' nickname, is one of the strangest animals alive. It is roughly the size of a domestic chicken. It is completely flightless. It has whiskers like a cat, used to sense its environment. Its nostrils are at the very tip of its long beak rather than at the base, allowing it to sniff out food underground. And it lays an egg that is approximately 20% of its entire body weight. To put that in human terms, that would be equivalent to a woman giving birth to a child weighing roughly 12 to 15 kilograms. Scientists have puzzled over why the kiwi evolved to produce such a disproportionately enormous egg, and the best explanation is that the kiwi's ancestor was a much larger bird that gradually shrank in body size over millions of years, while the egg size remained relatively constant. The kiwi is essentially a large bird squeezed down into a small bird's body, still producing the eggs of its gigantic ancestor. In the New Zealand census of 2001, 53,715 people listed their religion as Jedi. Not as a joke, in the sense of not being counted, as an official response. 53,715. That was more than the number of people who identified as Buddhist or Hindu in New Zealand that year. The Jedi response became one of the most famous census curiosities in history, and led several governments around the world who had been considering adding Jedi as an official religious category to decline, on the grounds that the New Zealand data suggested the answer would not be serious. New Zealand has the highest ratio of fictional religion practitioners to population of any country that has ever conducted a census. On September 19, 1893, New Zealand became the first country in the world to grant women the right to vote in national elections. Not just unmarried women, as some other places had partially done, all women. The campaigner most credited with achieving this is Kate Shepherd, who led a sustained movement that gathered nearly 32,000 signatures on a petition, representing approximately 1/4 of all adult women in the country at the time, and presented it to Parliament with an energy and organizational sophistication that made rejection politically impossible. The United States would not grant women the vote for another 27 years. France waited until 1944. Switzerland, often considered one of the world's most democratic countries, did not grant women the vote in national elections until 1971. New Zealand, a colonial nation at the bottom of the world with a population of under 1 million, did it first. Baldwin Street in the city of Dunedin holds the Guinness World Record for the steepest residential street on Earth, with a gradient of approximately 35%. At its steepest point, for every 10 meters you travel horizontally, you rise nearly 4 meters vertically. The street is paved in concrete rather than asphalt, because asphalt would melt and slide to the bottom on hot days. Every winter, locals hold an event in which participants roll chocolate balls down the street and race to the bottom to collect them. The world's steepest residential street doubles as a confectionery delivery system once a year. Now we arrive at the economic story that transformed all of this extraordinary natural and cultural strangeness into one of the most productive food exporting nations on Earth. And it begins, as so many of the best economic stories do, with an accident of geography and a technology that didn't exist yet. When European settlers began arriving in New Zealand in significant numbers through the 1840s and 1850s, they found something that was, from an agricultural perspective, almost unbelievably promising. The climate was temperate, the rainfall was reliable, the grass grew almost year-round across the rolling hills and plains of both islands, and the soil, enriched by centuries of volcanic activity and decaying native forest, was extraordinarily fertile. The settlers also found that sheep took to New Zealand with an enthusiasm that matched the country's enthusiasm for keeping them. The first sheep arrived with Captain James Cook in the 1770s, though that initial attempt failed quickly. Serious commercial flocks were established from the 1840s onwards, primarily merino sheep brought from Australia, farmed almost exclusively for their wool during a period when the global textile industry had an apparently limitless appetite for raw fiber. By 1870, New Zealand's sheep population had reached approximately 10 million. By 1880, it was approaching 17 million. The entire economic identity of the country's European settler population was organized around wool. Enormous sheep stations, some spanning tens of thousands of hectares, occupied the high country of the South Island. Wealthy English absentee landowners received income from stations managed by overseers. The wool was baled, shipped to London, and woven into the suits, coats, and blankets of the industrial world. New Zealand had found its product, and the product was doing well. But it was doing well only in one form. The lamb and mutton that the sheep also produced was essentially worthless, because there was no way to get fresh meat from the bottom of the world to the consumers of Europe before it spoiled. The sheep could produce two forms of value, but the distance and technology of the era allowed only one of them to be captured. On February 15, 1882, a sailing ship called the Dunedin left the port of Port Chalmers near Dunedin in the South Island, carrying nearly 5,000 carcasses of frozen lamb and mutton in its refrigerated hold. It arrived in London 98 days later. The meat was still frozen. It was sold, it was eaten, it was declared excellent. And everything about New Zealand's economic future changed in that single voyage. Refrigerated shipping was a technology that had been proven in small-scale experiments, but the Dunedin's voyage was the first commercially successful long-distance shipment of frozen meat in history. The immediate consequence was obvious. New Zealand's surplus sheep, which had previously been slaughtered and their carcasses wasted or converted into tallow, suddenly had a market. The more profound consequence was structural. New Zealand was no longer just a wool farm, it was a meat farm. And the grass that grew so abundantly across the hills was not just feeding wool-producing animals, it was feeding the dining tables of Britain and eventually the world. The journey from grass to gold had been proved possible, and the shipping companies, the meat works, and the farmers all moved immediately to exploit it. By the early 20th century, New Zealand was exporting millions of frozen carcasses annually. The landscape itself was transformed by the demand. The merinos of the high country, suited for wool but lean on meat, were increasingly replaced by crossbred sheep, better suited for producing both wool and heavier, meatier carcasses. Freezing works, the industrial processing plants where sheep were slaughtered and frozen for export, became the dominant industrial facilities in provincial New Zealand. The expression that defined the entire era of New Zealand's development entered the language: riding on the sheep's back. The country's prosperity, its infrastructure, its public services, its entire capacity to afford to be a modern, developed nation rested on what fell off a sheep's body and what you could sell its carcass for in London. The sheep population peaked at approximately 70 million in the 1980s. 70 million sheep in a country of approximately 3.5 million people, a ratio of 20 sheep for every single human being. At that peak, New Zealand's grass-fed pastoral farming system was producing more livestock per hectare than almost any comparable operation on Earth, and doing it through a production method that was almost uniquely natural. New Zealand's geography means that for most of the country, for most of the year, animals graze outdoors on pasture. No barns, no heating, no expensive grain supplements. The grass grows, the sheep eat the grass, and the farmer's job is largely to manage the system rather than to power it from outside. This low-cost, grass-fed production system was the origin of New Zealand's competitive advantage in global food markets. And then the government did something extraordinary. In 1984, New Zealand's government removed almost all agricultural subsidies overnight. Not reduced them, not phased them out over a decade, removed them. In a single budget, farming support payments that had been propping up livestock and crop prices for decades were eliminated. The agricultural sector, which had been receiving government assistance equivalent to roughly 30% of farm income, suddenly had to survive entirely on market prices. Economists and farmers' groups predicted catastrophe. Foreign observers watched with fascination and some skepticism. The New Zealand farm sector went through a brutal adjustment period. Some farmers could not adapt and left the land. Land prices fell sharply. But the farming community that survived the adjustment emerged as genuinely one of the most efficient and competitive in the world. Freed from the distortion of subsidies, New Zealand farmers innovated aggressively in genetics, pasture management, and supply chain logistics. They became extraordinarily good at producing high-quality food at competitive cost, because their survival depended on it in a way that their subsidized competitors in Europe and the United States never experienced. The dairy industry, which had grown steadily alongside the sheep sector through the 20th century, began overtaking sheep as New Zealand's primary agricultural economic driver in the early 1990s. The country's dairy cows, like its sheep, were pasture-fed year-round, producing milk at a cost per kilogram of solids that was among the lowest of any major dairy producer globally. And the consolidation of the country's dairy processing industry into a single giant cooperative transformed the economics of the export market entirely. In 2001, New Zealand's two largest dairy cooperatives merged to form Fonterra, a farmer-owned cooperative that became the world's largest exporter of dairy products. Fonterra processes approximately 30% of the world's internationally traded dairy products. Its products reach over 140 countries. Every significant category of dairy export: whole milk powder, skim milk powder, butter, cheese, cream, infant formula, flows through Fonterra's processing plants on its way to global markets. The numbers that result from all of this are almost impossible to reconcile with a country of 5 million people. For the year ending June 2025, New Zealand's food and fibre exports reached a record 59.9 billion New Zealand dollars, accounting for approximately 63% of all merchandise exports from the country. Dairy alone accounted for $27 billion of that. Red meat and wool contributed approximately 9.9 billion. Horticulture, including kiwi fruit, apples, and a wine industry that has made Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc one of the most recognized white wine styles in the world, added billions more. A country whose entire population would fit comfortably within the city limits of Shanghai produces enough food to feed approximately 40 million people. The grass that grows so reliably in the New Zealand climate, nourished by the reliable rainfall and the fertile volcanic soil, is not just an agricultural input. It is the foundation of an export machine that punches further above its weight than almost any comparable economy on Earth. The specific genius of New Zealand's agricultural model is that it is built on something essentially free. The sun shines, the rain falls, the grass grows. The sheep eat the grass, the cows eat the grass. The animals convert sunlight and water into protein and fat with remarkable efficiency, powered by a climate that requires almost no artificial supplementation for most of the year. New Zealand didn't build this system, it inherited it. What it did build was the infrastructure to capture its value: the refrigerated shipping chains, the cooperative processing companies, the scientific investment in genetics and pasture management, and the trade relationships with the markets of Asia, Europe, and beyond that make $59 billion of annual food exports possible from a population of 5 million. And crucially, it did all of this without farming subsidies, in a deregulated agricultural market that forced every farmer to be efficient or find another occupation. The same country that built a global food empire on grass invented commercial bungee jumping. In 1988, a New Zealander named A.J. Hackett constructed a platform on the Kawarau Bridge near Queenstown and began charging tourists for the privilege of jumping off it while attached to a large elastic cord. Hackett had tested the concept by jumping, illegally, off the Eiffel Tower in Paris in 1987, which generated enormous international attention and apparently sufficient confidence in the engineering to begin selling tickets. Queenstown, which sits in a landscape of lakes and mountains so dramatic that the Lord of the Rings films used it extensively, became the adventure tourism capital of the world, partly on the strength of that first commercial bungee operation. New Zealand also invented zorbing, the practice of rolling down a hill inside a large inflatable transparent ball, which is exactly as self-explanatory as it sounds. A country at the end of the world, with more than enough open hills on which to roll things, apparently decided that doing so in a human-sized hamster ball was the logical next step. New Zealand's national rugby team, the All Blacks, has a winning percentage across all test matches of approximately 77%, the highest sustained winning record of any international sports team in history across any major sport. The All Blacks performed the haka, a traditional Maori ceremonial and war dance before every test match, and the sight of 15 large men performing it with complete commitment a few meters from their opponents has been described by those opponents in terms ranging from awe-inspiring to genuinely terrifying. New Zealand's population of 5 million has produced a rugby team capable of defeating nations of 50, 100, or 200 million people with sufficient frequency to hold the top winning record in the sport. This is sometimes cited as evidence of national sporting culture, sometimes as evidence that rugby talent scales with passion rather than population, and sometimes as evidence that New Zealand simply produces an unusually high density of very large humans who enjoy physical contact. The kea, a parrot native to the alpine regions of New Zealand's South Island, has developed a specific and entirely voluntary habit of destroying cars. Not accidentally, deliberately. The kea is considered one of the most intelligent birds on Earth, and it applies that intelligence primarily to extracting rubber, plastic, and metal from unattended vehicles. Keas pull windshield wiper blades of cars. They strip the rubber seals from windows. They remove side mirror covers. They investigate engine components through any accessible opening. They have been documented working cooperatively in small groups to dismantle components that an individual bird cannot manage alone. Tourists parking near kea habitats are warned in advance that their vehicles are effectively offering the birds a puzzle they are well equipped to solve. The kea's intelligence was evolved for finding food in alpine environments. In the modern world, it applies that intelligence to solving cars, which the birds apparently find equally engaging. Auckland, New Zealand's largest city, is built on and around approximately 50 volcanic cones. Not former volcanoes, active volcanic cones, part of the Auckland volcanic field, which geologists consider dormant rather than extinct, meaning it could produce new eruptions in the future. The most recently active volcano in the field, Rangitoto Island, last erupted approximately 600 years ago, around the time the first Maori were settling in the area. Aucklanders live, work, and build their city on what is, geologically speaking, a volcanic zone that has produced 50 eruptions over the past 200,000 years, and has not formally announced it is finished. The harbour views from those volcanic cones are spectacular. New Zealand has no native snakes. It has no bears. It has no large predatory mammals of any kind other than those introduced by humans. Its most dangerous native animal is a small spider called a katipo, which prefers to hide in sand dunes and bites humans very rarely. The most dangerous creature a visitor is likely to encounter in the New Zealand wilderness is a determined kea pulling their wiper blades off. This absence of danger is a direct consequence of the 83 million years of isolation that gave New Zealand its bizarre, bird-dominated ecosystem, and it makes the country one of the physically safest wilderness environments on Earth for human recreation. The kiwi fruit, New Zealand's most famous horticultural export, is not from New Zealand. It is from China, where it grew wild and was cultivated for centuries as the Chinese gooseberry. Seeds were brought to New Zealand in the early 20th century. New Zealanders cultivated it, improved it, rebranded it with a name that associated it with their country, and began exporting it globally in the 1950s. The name kiwi fruit was formally adopted in 1959, partly to distinguish it from the Chinese gooseberry label, and partly to give it a marketable New Zealand identity. New Zealand is now one of the world's leading exporters of a fruit it did not create, did not domesticate, and did not originally name, but which it turned into a global brand through the same agricultural skill that it applied to sheep and dairy. If there is a characteristic New Zealand move in the global economy, it is taking something that grows from the earth and turning it into something the world pays premium prices for. New Zealand officially trademarked the term Middle Earth after Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings and Hobbit film trilogies, made entirely on location in the country's landscapes, brought the phrase into global tourist vocabulary. New Zealand is the only country in the world whose central bank has put fictional characters, specifically hobbits, on its legal tender. A $5 coin featuring Bilbo Baggins was issued and constitutes genuine New Zealand currency. A country at the bottom of the earth, best known for its sheep, its rugby players, and its impossibly green hills, leveraged a set of fantasy films into a tourism infrastructure that now brings millions of visitors annually to locations that exist in the imagination of J.R.R. Tolkien and on the hillsides of both New Zealand islands simultaneously. The clearest lake in the world is Nelson's Blue Lake on the South Island of New Zealand, where underwater visibility reaches up to 80 meters. Divers in the lake can see 80 meters in any direction. Most swimming pools offer about 20 meters of visibility on a good day. Nelson's Blue Lake, fed by a neighboring glacial lake whose water filters through gravel for years before entering, produces the purest natural fresh water on Earth by optical clarity measurements. New Zealand also claims credit in the ongoing and never fully resolved dispute with Australia for the invention of the flat white, the coffee drink that spread from Antipodean coffee culture to cafes around the world. Whether the flat white was invented in Auckland or Sydney is a question that both countries take with complete seriousness, and that neither is close to settling. New Zealand arrived last on the planet, settled the newest of the world's inhabited lands, and built on grass and sheep and volcanic soil and refrigerated ships, one of the most productive agricultural export economies per capita on Earth. A country of 5 million people sitting on a mostly drowned continent at the bottom of the world feeds 40 million, invented bungee jumping, trademarked Middle-earth, puts fictional characters on its money, has a rugby team that beats everyone, and produces the world's clearest lake, the world's most disproportionate bird egg, and the world's most destructive parrot. It is, by almost any measure, the strangest and most remarkable small country that the human story has produced. And it got there on grass,